But going like through this year, and obviously it's been a long time, like you mentioned with the struggles, but it certainly seemed like everything kind of changed. And now, granted, these are games that are a little easier to play when you're out of it. But when Eichel came back and the team got the win and the crowd was going nuts, like that kind of did get this group a little bit even more together. And all of a sudden they're firing all cylinders. Like, would you say that might have been kind of a rallying cry for the team?
Well, I think it was certainly a game that was circled on the calendar. That's for sure. You know, Eichel was basically the face of the franchise since he came here, 6-7 years ago. He was supposed to be the savior, right? And that was a game that was certainly circled. But the team struggled at the start of the year. There's no question about it. And then a couple weeks before the Vegas game, they had a couple games against the Maple Leafs. Okay. Maple Leafs come in here and they are literally the most obnoxious. I call them obnoxious because, like they come
They're
in
the
here
worst.
the entire Toronto fan base shows up into Buffalo every single year and they spank the Sabres around something fierce. And it's been going on for years, but somehow this god awful team that was not playing real well put a game together and beat the Toronto Maple Leafs 5-1. And that was, I think, right at the beginning of March. And it was like one of those moments where it's like, wow, holy jumping. That was a great game. And they built off that because they played Toronto at the Heritage Classic a couple weeks later. And everybody's thinking the Maple Leafs are going to murder the Sabres. And we all know what happened in that game. Another strong showing. And it just, it's been building here in Buffalo the last month and a half.
Great. Going back to Jack for a sec. What exactly did that relationship start to fray? Like when did it start to go wrong?
Well, Jack came here as a young guy. He came here larger than life. It was him and McDavid, two of the best, players that have been drafted, 1 and 2 in a very long time. He was a guy that was supposed to be the savior of this city. And this team was not managed properly. I mean, Jack is one player. He's an elite player. I've said he's been one of the best players in the world, a top 10, 15 player in the world for a long time, but he was not supported with the right players. There was not the right guidance, when, GM wise, coaching wise, and player personnel that got brought in was not the right group.
When you say it's circled on the calendar, do you mean for like the fans or do you mean for even like the players and ownership or whatever like that? Because I feel like the players that are currently there, at least most of them, didn't really have a hand in how all this went down and how frustrated that Jack became with management. And I mean, I'll even date it back to the Ryan O'Reilly trade. That was horrible. You guys took a massive L there. And at that point, you got to think he's thinking like, man, I've been fairly patient so far. And then all of a sudden they're going to trade away our best player for a bunch of guys who haven't, didn't end up sticking around. And I think he had a right to start to get frustrated, and maybe some of the body language that was pouring over that fans became frustrated with. I mean, he had a right to be frustrated.
He did. I think early on, Jack and his body language, he was an 18-year-old kid. He didn't know how to deal with the media. I don't think Jack was used to losing. He was a Boston kid, grew up and just shredded the game of hockey. He was a super high-end talent, always playing up levels, always being basically one of the top kids of the entire age group. And what happens is over time, you guys know this, you guys have played on bad teams and you've played on great teams. And, great teams, good teams find ways to win. They usually have veteran leadership, all this kind of stuff. Well, Jack was not surrounded with the right group. Okay. He needed help himself. And, when you watch every single year, you're in last place or third, worst team in the league, it starts to wear on your psyche. Every year you're told by the management, go home, work hard, be prepared for the next season. And the next season rolls into another season and another season. And then you have Jack Eichel that watches Ryan O'Reilly get traded for basically nothing. He goes to St. Louis. He wins the Conn Smythe. He wins the Selke Trophy and a Stanley Cup in 1 year. I'm sure that Jack is sitting there going, what the hell just happened?
I want that
here?
program.
Yeah, I want that program. And, you know, I think Jack gave it a couple more years. And then it was just like, you know what, 5 years in, things deteriorated. And he was just like, I'm done. I need to be moved.
So in those 2 years, did you personally see any changes that would have maybe had a change of effect on him and maybe the way that he felt about or the organization? Or are you in full agreement that at that point you're like, yeah, even me as a player with what he was providing to the organization, I would have been at wit's end with it?
I mean,
you've been
listen,
vocal about him.
5 years in listen, I'm vocal on some personal reasons. Okay. What I say about Jack is things that I have witnessed. Okay. Things that I have heard. This is a small city. I all different kinds of people in this city, and there's all, I certainly have my opinion, but my opinions are based on personal opinions. And, I like, if we want to get into the Jack Eichel thing, we can do that. But for me, it's like, I look at Jack and he's 5 years into losing. And I don't think that Jack felt that he saw a quick end in sight and just needed to change. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him whatsoever. He went through what, three coaches, 3 GMs. It was not done properly. Do
you think the response was fair from the crowd on that date that was circled on the calendar for when they came back? Like, do you think that with what he'd personally done for the organization, that he deserved the first sellout of the season or close to it?
Oh, and then it was the first sellout of the season. This has been the lowest attendance in the league because the fans here are pissed off. They're fed up. The fans, for the first time in a very long time, in a big market like Buffalo that sells out every single game, they're pissed off. They're like, screw it. We're not going to games anymore. We're going to show this organization that we're not going to put up with this anymore. And I don't disagree with them, to be honest with you. But, with Kevin Adams coming in, there has been changes. He's done it the right way. The fan base here is starting to see, the team evolve, and that's a positive thing. But, going back to Jack, I don't blame, the night. I think Jack honestly thought that he was going to get a standing ovation. He put a lot into this, his game. I don't think there was too many nights when you can actually sit there and say that Jack did not give everything to this team. And I think that he was actually very surprised that the fans were booing him. And I think that hurt. I think he was shocked. I think he was hurt. And I think there's also some media members that push Jack's buttons. And I think Jack at times struggles with his emotions on how to deal with it.
So coming off a loss in the return, when you're thinking, yeah, everyone's kind of going to be like, thanks for what you tried to do here. All of a sudden he's getting the boos, they lose, and that's what kind of spurred those comments that I'm not going to say I know for a fact, but I'm guessing he regrets it a little bit. Right. I mean, he's made a complete enemy out of the entire city now. Whereas if he had just said like, hey, I've moved on, it would be a little different.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, that's like life in general, right? We make, listen, I made a shit ton of bad decisions in my career, and we've got
how much time you got?
How much time?
We'll get to those in the second part.
Yeah. Right. I think Jack, looking back, would have really liked to choose words a little differently. I think there was just so much emotion. I think Jack wanted to come back here. I think he wanted to perform well. I think he wanted to win for his team. And it was just an emotional roller coaster. He gets traded for Peyton Krebs. He scores the first goal. He's a 20-year-old kid. Okay. Then all of a sudden you have Alex Tuck, who comes in and scores the third goal to make it 3-1. And, I think Jack was pissed off. He's a competitor. There's no question about it. He's a very, very competitive kid. But at the same time, Jack, over the course of his time here in Buffalo, watched him countless time deal with, the emotional side of things. He's a very emotional player. He's an emotional guy when he talks after games. And I think sometimes he just gets himself in a little bit of trouble.
Right. What was the reason for the team just not let him get the surgery he preferred? Like, was it loyalty to the doctors? Was it an ego thing? Why did they just let him get it?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's I can't answer that question, but I'll tell you this. I think when you look at it as former players that have played in the game, I think Jack did the right thing. Okay. I'll tell anybody that I think Jack did the right thing. I think us players, no one's going to tell us what to do with our body, because we're the ones that are going to have to deal with the shit after we're done the game. I mean, we've all been through this. We all have issues, you think that once we play all this time in the NHL and how demanding it is on your body, that all of a sudden you just finish the game and everything's fine. No, there's multiple surgeries that follow. I just had a surgery on my knee 3.5 months ago just to continue to clean it up. I always have issues. And you got to take care of yourself. I think Jack did the right thing by holding out. It probably went longer than expected, because Jack's making $10 million a year, and there's only a certain amount of teams that can fit him under their cap, right?